Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 5 of our International Women's Month Her Story Summit. This is your host, Gertrude Mache, based here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. For those of you who don't know what the Her Story Circle is all about, we are a global platform dedicated to amplifying the voices of women from all walks of life. We believe in the power of storytelling to inspire, educate, and connect. The Her Story International Women's Day Summit is a virtual event that celebrates the achievements of women and explores the challenges that they've faced. Through inspiring speeches and panel discussions, the summit aims to empower women. This year's theme is Voices That Shape the Future, Women Rising Through Story, Power, and Possibility. So sit back, relax, enjoy the day with us as I bring on our first speaker. Thank you for being here. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Thank you so much, Gertrude. My name is Aubrey Morgan Yee. I am based in beautiful Oahu, Hawaii, my home, and I'm really happy to be able to share my story today. So when I was just 20 years old, and I have to pause for a moment because I amazingly realized this morning that this was exactly 30 years ago today, this day. I held my father's hand as he took his last breath. I feel him with me right now. As that exhale left his body, I felt the entire room shift, and I knew his spirit had left his physical form. The person that I loved so dearly had instantly become clay, a wax figure, something other than my beloved dad. In that moment, I felt the universe shift on its axis. I was no longer held by the boundaries of what I call my body. I felt a oneness, an aliveness, an interconnection with everything that can only be described in words as unity consciousness. And in that moment, it hit me in the deepest part of my soul that we're only given the incredible blessing of aliveness until we die. That we don't know, can't know when that will happen, but we know it will happen. No one gets out alive. So why then are we so afraid to live in our full authenticity, to follow our dreams, to dare and love and experience this body and this earth? We're alive until we die, so why are we living as if we're already dead? I sat under the stars that night feeling absolutely at one with everything. I somehow had enough awareness of this profound experience to say to myself, Aubrey, this is only going to last about 3 days. Remember this feeling. It's the gift of your father's passing. Don't lose it. Earlier that day, I had laid in his bed, feeling all my grief, and I found a piece of scrap paper with a handwritten note on it. It was written in his signature all caps writing style, and it said very simply, life is for living, love is for giving. Have you heard? He must have looked at that note every day while he was sick, as a reminder of the blessing of his life. He had touched the consciousness I was experiencing. So I found myself sitting with the paradox of profound loss and this gift of awakening. I felt my body rising and expanding to meet my soul. It was so profound. I realized that I had just lost someone so precious, and yet here I was, still alive. Why should I be afraid of anything? I found myself questioning the narratives I heard all around me. Why him? Why us? Why me? And I found myself thinking instead, why not me? Why am I any more or less special than any other human on earth? We are all going to die, so we shouldn't be surprised when it actually happens. Most of us are walking around half asleep as our soul slowly withers under the weight of fear and stress. When we have the precious chance to live our lives to their fullest potential and experience all the magic that this incredible planet has to offer, we are missing the most important truth, that our human body has an expiration date, and we have the chance to feel so deeply the love of all our relations. It suddenly felt so small and bizarre to be worried about things like my grades, career paths, speaking in public, and all the daily aspects of living as a human that spark strange fears and cause us to shrink. I'm alive right now. And while I'm alive, literally anything that life has to offer is possible for me. Living my purpose, living my joy doesn't need to be scary, especially when it comes to mundane things like starting a business, going on an adventure, telling someone I love them, writing a book. We stop ourselves before we even start because of wildly ridiculous fears. What will people think of me? What if I lose money? What if no one likes it? What if I get rejected? None of those things are going to kill you, so why live in fear? After my father's passing, I returned to college and I had been changed irrevocably. I was no longer afraid of the future. I was curious about things. I had no fears about trying, starting, asking, experimenting, and doing exactly what I wanted to do with my life. Where there was a will, I believed there was a way. So I traveled the world, paid straight out of college. I started my first business before I was 25 with zero experience and did my first real estate development in Hawaii before I was 30. I worked for myself when and how I wanted, and I traveled when and how I wanted. I decided that financial freedom in my world meant not ever having to think about a bill or think about money much at all. So I put all the bills I could on auto pay and stopped balancing a checkbook. I took on smart debt without fear to launch businesses and buy homes. It's just money. It won't kill you. And I lived relatively simply so I could have lots of joyful experiences and free time. I was living a fulfilling life on my own terms. And yet, as time passed and life continued, the lesson of my father's passing became a tale that I told myself. I started forgetting, and I started numbing from the pain of the world. Something profound shifted within me when Donald Trump was elected in 2016. I was getting my doctorate in alternative futures. I'm a futurist, with a focus on political theory and indigenous politics. So I was in the midst of unlearning everything I thought I knew about myself, my country, the world, and I could see the writing on the wall. The American political experiment, the myths of freedom and fairness, all were crumbling before my eyes, and I felt powerless. I started numbing big time. That meant late nights in bed on Facebook, practicing what I justified as social media activism, drinking glasses of wine to get riled up and ready to argue for the world I believed in. The world was on fire, and I told myself that only I held the water hose. My family life was eroding. 2 sweet young kids at home and a husband who was feeling increasingly alone and isolated. I started going to therapy. And I will never forget the moment my therapist said to me, you can't do anything to stop the world from burning when your own house is on fire. It hit me in my chest. I had forgotten the lessons of my father's death, that the most important things in the world are the people you love and the joy of being alive, that we're only alive until we're dead, and that so many of us, myself now included, behave like dead people walking. I was really high functioning on the outside, while my inner life was spiraling out of control. I was watching my own house burn while I gave all the water in my well to the world around me. And it would never be enough. Because the truth is, no one can save the world. We can only bring our own lives into balance. And when enough of us do that, the world no longer needs saving. Just before the pandemic hit, it all came to a head. My husband had given me an ultimatum. He had stopped drinking to show me it was possible. One night just before dinner, he told me I needed to change or he would have to leave, that I needed to start that night at an AA meeting. And I have to say, Spirit has a definite sense of humor because, get this, the AA meeting was literally happening in an hour across the street from our house. No barrier to entry, no excuses. I was terrified. All the shame and judgment I felt compounded in my system as I walked across the street. I saw this tall man with big energy greeting everyone, and I felt horrified. There was no turning back. He looked straight at me, smiled a huge smile, and said, "A newbie, how amazing. Welcome. We're so happy you're here." He gave me the hugest hug. And in that instant, my whole body surrendered to the process. All the judgment I was holding was mine, which meant I could let it all go. I could surrender. I could trust life. I remembered the lessons of my father's passing. Control is an illusion. We're only alive until we're dead. Surrendering to your life it's not foolish. It's the most intelligent and courageous thing you can do as a human. So now we are in a moment of collective unraveling. The numbing we've participated in individually and collectively is killing us, and it's destroying the earth. Everything we once thought was stable, it's shifting beneath us like quicksand. The systems we thought were immutable, they're dissolving because their myths can't hold in the face of truth. We're looking up from our sleep to remember that the peace we thought was true has been built on the suffering of others, human, non-human, and Earth herself. But these systems are fracturing because they need to, because they're ready for this. We are ready for this because something else, something that is fully alive, wants to come through. This collapse, whatever you want to call it, this moment, it's not an end of the world. It's the end of worlds that are ready to die. And it's our work to hospice them, compost their teachings, and nurture the soil of more beloved futures where everyone gets to thrive. This moment is an initiation into the core dream of what it means to be human, an earthling of earth, alive in a body, on an earth that's loving and abundant. We live in a world that trains us from birth to inhabit something I call modern mind, something trained in scarcity, separation, materialism. We believe ourselves to be separate in a world that's not safe. It's not our fault that we think this way. Every system is designed to teach and reinforce this way of thinking. Indigenous peoples, people of color, non-cisgendered folk, differently abled folk, animals, plants, they've all known this for centuries. Now the rest of us are waking up to this reality. What an amazing time to be human. Knowledge is power. Awareness is the first step, and we're ready. We're being asked to shift deeply to something I call ecological mind or indigenous mind. The mind that holds a consciousness of interbeing, animism, non-duality, love, interdependence. It remembers that we're made from earth, returning to earth, that we are always, in all ways, interbeing with everything. The shift might feel huge for you. It might not even make sense, but you know that something's not right, that the gig is up. The world you once thought was solid is dissolving. A wise elder once told me, when you shift the trajectory of a huge ship just 1 degree, over time, you end up in completely new lands. We can start today with 1 degree of shift, and I promise it will take you to new lands. On the other side of that is your birthright of freedom and joy. There's lots of ways to do this, many that are free, available, and simple. I'm going to offer 3. No barrier to entry, no excuses. The first one is to begin your day in reverence. No phone, no noise. Pour yourself a glass of clean, fresh water. Amazing that you have access to clean, fresh water. Hold that glass and offer gratitude to your water. Water is proven to hold memory. Thank the water for offering its memory to your body. Start with the very simple, thank you, water, I'm grateful for you. The words thank you have been scientifically proven to rearrange the structure of water to a healing shape and frequency. Imagine that, just gratitude, 2 minutes and some hydration. Trust me, it is addictive. And the second invitation I have for you, again, no barrier to entry, free and available to all. This is loving kindness. In Hawaii, we're small islands in a very large ocean, which means that everyone pretty much knows everyone or close to it. So I'm always aware that everyone I encounter is a friend that I just don't know yet. That's the spirit of what we call aloha, the spirit of what Buddha called loving kindness. Imagine walking around with the respect and kindness for every stranger you would offer a friend. When a whole society moves this way, everything changes. Say hi to the grocery store clerk, ask about their day, watch them light up, and extend the loving kindness to yourself, because when you are whole and radiant, you light up the world around you naturally. The final invitation I have for you is equally simple, but not always easy. It's to allow yourself to dream again. Follow your curiosity and let your imagination come alive. Pay attention to when you feel alive. What activities, people, and places leave you feeling alive and which leave you feeling drained? Find simple and small ways to do the things that bring you to that feeling of aliveness and take a 1 degree shift in that direction. Watch your world open up. Imagination is a superpower, and the world needs and wants your dreams. It's why you're here. You're only here for a short time. We live in a profound era of challenge and opportunity where the old worlds are dissolving, but the new worlds are not yet born. It's a time of creation, connection, dreaming, and remembering. You are here because you matter, and you matter because you are here. It's that simple. No one else now or ever has what you have within you right now. So I invite you to find the places in your life where you're numbing. We're all doing it. And begin to release them without judgment. Ask the people who love you for support. Know that your life depends on it because you're only alive until you die. The future doesn't need more well-trained workers with 401ks. Our beloved futures need more humans who remember the gift of their aliveness and live it with abandon. Because my father, John Morgan, knew, who I can feel with me right now. Life is for living. Love is for giving. Have you heard? Thank you, Gertrude.
Oh, wow. What a powerful message, Aubrey. Thank you so much for reminding us all to live. You're right. A lot of us sleepwalk through life. And you experiencing your father's passing like that at such a young age was a gift.
Yeah.
He woke you up so you can wake up so many others. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, what a start. Okay, so I'm going to bring you back on when we have our forum, okay?
Beautiful. Thank you.
What an incredible start to the end of a 5-day event. An awakening to all of us that peace begins with you. It starts with every single individual person doing their little bit to wake up and to live and to love. Our next speaker is coming to us via video. She could not be here with us today. Thank you so much, Sarah, for sending us your video and being with us virtually.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Moore, and I am so glad to be with you today. I'm going to speak about the biology of burnout and why performers can't switch off. I spent 21 years in military aviation. I flew air assault missions. I survived combat zones. I survived an abusive marriage. But the moment that broke me happened in a swimming pool during a routine training event that every military pilot knows and dreads, called Dunker. The world turns upside down in an instant. You're strapped into a cockpit. The metal is cold against your wet flight suit. And then, splash, the Dunker, a simulated helicopter crash, hits the water. And within seconds, the cockpit fills with water. You literally watch it rising up, and everyone's trying to get that last breath in. And then it rolls and sinks, and you're submerged, disoriented, and the light from the surface is disappearing. I had done this a dozen times, but this time, something changed. My lungs screamed for air, but my brain did something terrifying. It went quiet. My hands stopped working. My vision narrowed into a pinhole, and my entire body started shaking, and I couldn't make it stop. That day in 2009 wasn't just a training exercise. It was the moment my nervous system finally collapsed under the weight of a decade of high-performance pressure. I wasn't drowning in the pool. I was drowning in my own physiology. To understand how I got there, you have to look at the load that I was carrying in 2009. I was 6 months post-deployment for Operation Iraqi Freedom. I had been a Black Hawk pilot in command and a platoon leader in combat operations. I was heavily scrutinized as one of the only women officers in my unit. The weight of responsibility for my troops and my mission was still heavy on my shoulders. I was ignoring severe back pain and spasms that had started during deployment. I had numbness in my left arm and a medical cocktail of pills that threatened my flying career and my sobriety. Less than 90 days after landing back in the United States, the Army had pushed me into a 6 months captain's career course. I had no permanent home, and I had zero time to decompress from the war. Unfortunately, this wasn't uncommon for these types of classes for the Army to send us to these schools as downtime before we were being sent back on deployment. Behind closed doors, I was fighting a war in private. I was isolated in a physically and verbally abusive marriage. In that pool, during that exercise, my nervous system finally hit total system failure. I didn't quit, I broke. My body simply had no choice but to force me to address the overload. My 2009 was essentially the world's 2020, a perfect storm of isolation, physical pain, and relentless stress. At that time, I didn't understand the mechanics of it. I just thought this was my new broken reality. But as we'll see today, there's a reason the system breaks, and more importantly, a way to rebuild it. We call it burnout, and we treat it like a calendar problem. If only I had more hours in the day, or more vacation days, or a better meditation app, I'd be fine. But for the high achiever, the veteran, the CEO, the parent, burnout isn't a lack of willpower, it's a biological lockout. When you live in a state of high stakes for too long, your brain decides that peace is no longer a luxury that you can afford. You feel wired but tired. You're exhausted, yet you can't sleep. You feel like you're broken. But I am here to tell you, you are not broken. You are stuck. Your nervous system has forgotten how to come home. To understand why you can't just relax, we have to look at your autonomic nervous system. Think of this as your body's internal driver. You have the sympathetic nervous system, which is your body's gas pedal. And then you have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the brake. And we've all heard of fight, flight, and freeze. And that's the part of your sympathetic nervous system. When the stress is skyrocketing, the sympathetic nervous system is on high and it's slamming the gas pedal. When the stress is too much, your body freezes trying to protect you. In an ideal world, the stress activation cycle looks like a wave. So the stress hits and the sympathetic nervous system activates to take care of that stressful event. And then the parasympathetic nervous system comes online to slow your nervous system back down. That's your brake pedal. And then your nervous system should essentially be in neutral until the next activating event hits. The problem for high performers is that we spend years slamming on the gas for everything: work, emails, home life, parenting, relationships. Eventually, the cable snaps and the brake has been disengaged for so long that it doesn't even know how to work. Your body learns that neutral, the state of safety, rest, and connection, is dangerous. It feels like a waste of time. So your biology stays in an activated survival mode, even when you're sitting on your sofa on a Sunday afternoon. When I sought help, the answer was often a prescription cocktail of muscle relaxers and pain pills. And while medication has its place, it felt like it was putting a piece of tape over the check engine light without even fixing the engine. I decided to treat myself like a biological puzzle. I dove into neuroscience to find out the real science behind stress, trauma, and PTSD. And if our systems can get stuck, can we retrain the hardware to run properly? I spent 10 years rebuilding my system from the bottom up, moving from the panic attack that I had in that dunker tank back into a fully regulated life. I didn't think my way out of it. I physically worked my way out of it. So to get your damn life back, you need a system, not a suggestion. And this is what I call the damn framework: discovery, action, and momentum. So let's talk about discovery. This is the biological audit. You wouldn't take your car to a mechanic who thinks he knows how an engine works, but has never really looked under the hood, right? Yet we do this to ourselves every day. We try to fix our check engine light with a vacation or a glass of wine without ever even opening the manual. Discovery starts with education. You actually have to learn how your nervous system works. Our modern lifestyle is a sensory assault. Blue light at midnight, 24-hour news cycles, and the expectation of instant responses. Your biology doesn't know the difference between a predator in the woods and a passive-aggressive email from your boss. To your nervous system, it is all the same threat. I want you to look at your last 24 hours and ask yourself some questions. Let's look at the morning spike. Did you wake up and immediately hand your nervous system over to the world by checking your email, social media, or the news before your feet even hit the floor? Caffeine. Are you drinking that third cup of coffee, not for the taste, but because you're terrified of what happens if you actually feel how tired you are in the afternoon? And the doom scroll delusion, we're all guilty of this, right? When you finally sit on the couch at night, you relax by staring at a screen that is literally feeding your brain 50 mini crises per minute. I know. These are the audits we need to take. And they're not just bad habits. These are biological signals. Every time you override your exhaustion with a stimulant or drown your anxiety with a distraction, you are telling your nervous system that we are still in the water. We are still drowning. Don't you dare switch off. Burnout isn't the problem. Burnout is the solution your body chose because you wouldn't listen to the warnings. You've been running a high performance engine on emergency backup power for years. To fix it, you don't need a vacation. You need a biological renegotiation. You need to stop being a passenger in your own body and start being the mechanic who actually understands the machine. Action. So once you recognized that your system is redline, it's now time to take action. But this isn't about trying harder. It's about a two-pronged attack on your stress. So part one is the external decoupling. First, you must take action on the stressors that you can control. We often treat stress like the weather, something that's just happening to us. But it's not. Action means looking at that discovery audit and ruthlessly eliminating the friction. It's setting the boundary with the client call who's trying to reach you at 9 p.m. It's deleting that app that leaves you feeling drained. It's renegotiating your goals so that they line with your capacity, not just your ambition. You cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. Taking action means physically changing the landscape of your life to eliminate unnecessary threats. Remember, you have the power to change your life, not just breathe through the pain. So let's look at the second side of this, the internal override. So even after you fix your environment, your body will still think that it's at war. And most people try to calm down by thinking. But you can't talk a fire alarm into turning off. You have to cut the power or fight the fire. For us to do this, we use bottom-up interventions. These are scientifically proven methods like breath work, somatic movement, and yoga to send a physical signal to the brain that says, the war is over. We are safe. Taking action is how you do this. So let's do this right now. This is called the physiological sigh. And this is the fastest biological hack to offload carbon dioxide and signal to the brain to relax. So everyone take a deep breath through your nose. And at the very top, take one more tiny sharp inhale. Now exhale long and slow through your mouth, like you're blowing through a straw. Yes, you just sent a signal directly to your vagus nerve that the threat has passed. Now let's talk about momentum. Exercises like what we just did are really an emergency brake, and you shouldn't have to pull the emergency brake every 5 miles. Momentum is how we recalibrate the gas pedal so that the car stops going into overdrive in the first place. Momentum is how we build the life that we want and deserve. Momentum is the alignment that keeps the car on the road. But here's the danger. High performers are great at sprinting through the recovery phase, only to slide right back into the red line lifestyle once they feel 10% better. Ask me how I know. Momentum is about biological integrity. It's the awareness that you are building a new baseline and you refuse to settle for just not drowning. Momentum means maintaining high-level awareness of your old ways. It's recognizing that first sign of a tight jaw or a short temper, not as a mood, but as an alarm, as a system failure. You don't wait for the dunker to roll over. You adjust the flight path the moment the wind shifts. So by practicing when things are calm, you build what we call a safety reservoir. You are teaching your body that neutral is a safe place to be. You aren't just doing the breath work. You are becoming a person who is fundamentally regulated. And this is how you ensure you don't backslide. You are not trying to get back to where you were before the burnout. You're building a new version of yourself that is resilient, someone who can handle the stress of life without sacrificing their soul to the survival response. But this isn't about my story or your schedule. This is a global crisis of biology. We are living in a world where the people we rely on most, our leaders, doctors, surgeons, teachers, first responders, and our parents, are operating from a state of chronic nervous system dysregulation. We are stuck on high, and that makes us fragile. When we operate in survival mode, we lose our empathy, we lose our creativity, we lose our very ability to solve the problems that are stressing us out in the first place. Imagine a world where leaders aren't reacting from a place of perceived threat, but responding from a place of regulation. If you take one thing away from this briefing today, let it be this: you are not broken. That moment in the Dunker tank when the world went dark and my body gave up, that wasn't a failure of my character. It was the brilliance of my body trying to save my life. Your burnout is not a sign that you are weak. It's a sign that you are a high-performance machine in need of a master mechanic. So use the DAM framework, discover your triggers, take action in your environment and your physiology, and build that momentum to stay regulated. You have access to the manual now. You just need to learn how the system works. Your nervous system learned how to survive, and now it's time to teach it how to live. Thank you.
Wow, another incredible presentation. So ladies, I'm going to bring you all on. I know that Aubrey, you have a plane to catch, and I have a few questions I want to ask you before you go, and then Alison, you'll be our next speaker. Amazing. And Alison, feel free to chime in, ask questions as well as we go, okay? Now, Aubrey, your talk focused on awakening to life after loss, moving from fear to aliveness, ecological consciousness, and small shifts towards a more connected world. Now, your father's note, life is for living, love is for giving, became a turning point for you.
Yeah.
How can people access that same awakening without experiencing profound loss first?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I think we all experience some sense of crisis, whatever it is in our lives. It doesn't have to be the same kind of profound loss. It may also just be like a gnawing in your, I spoke at one point about the gnawing in your belly that something's not quite right. You know, it might be for you, whereas mine was much more of like an event. It might be a feeling of lacklusterness or not aliveness, or, you know, getting up feeling already tired in the morning. Where is it in your life that you're feeling this sense of sort of drain and almost like, you know, walking dead, you know, not fully alive in your body? And that is the invitation, because on the other side of that, in between that and aliveness, is somewhere that you're numbing. It's somewhere that you're letting yourself shut down and you're not fully feeling what it is to be alive. Because you look at any newborn baby, they're a bundle of, you know, feeling, emotion, joy, crying. Like, it's just, there's so much aliveness. That's how we're meant to be. So if you're not feeling that in your life, then there's opportunity for more.
Now we have someone chiming in online. Thank you so much for being with us. That was so beautiful and profound. Thank you, Aubrey. It's wonderful when people are online and listening into this event as well. So it's lovely to get these comments. Now, you spoke about how many of us are walking around half asleep. What are the most common ways that you see people numbing themselves in modern life besides the alcohol? Alcohol is a big one. What other ways?
Yeah, it's a big one. I think there's so many, but some of the ones I see a lot: social media, you know, sort of technology, getting ourselves lost in technology is a big one. Food can be a really powerful numbing agent. Drama can be a really powerful numbing agent. We get ourselves like caught in these drama loops where we just sort of like constantly, life is getting in the way of us actually feeling what's really going on. Like gossip, that sort of thing, these really toxic behaviors that can get us into these loops where we actually don't slow down enough. You know, over busyness is a big one. For those of us, we think high achievement means doing more all the time. You know, radical rest is a revolutionary act. Slowing down enough to just rest and let your body recoup and let your mind actually integrate the experiences of your life. That's a radical revolutionary act in a world where success is tied to busyness.
Now, you introduced the idea of shifting from modern mind to ecological mind. What practical steps can someone take to begin making the shift in their everyday life?
Yeah, I think with that one, nature, like just connect with nature. And, you know, I'll use the example of someone living in a city. I was recently at my godfather's apartment in San Francisco, and I remember walking down the street, you know, middle of like full city environment, and I saw the trees, along the sidewalk, and they have this little tiny block of dirt that they're growing out of these big, beautiful trees. And literally their roots are like bubbling out over onto the concrete because there's so much aliveness in them that wants to just like express itself. So you can find the power and beauty of nature literally anywhere. Like I'll say to people sometimes, shout out to the grass growing through concrete. You see grass growing through concrete. What an example of resilience. So just notice nature. And it doesn't mean that you have to live in a place like I do in Hawaii where there's nature everywhere. It can be in a city. Nature is everywhere, and just notice it and start to feel the aliveness of nature because it's just right there and it's always available to tap into.
I love it. Well, start growing stuff. I live in an apartment.
Totally.
My kids were saying the other day, your apartment is turning into a jungle. I've got plants everywhere.
Yes. Life wants to life. It wants to be alive. It wants to express its aliveness. So plants, putting your hands in the soil if you have a chance to in an urban garden or in your own backyard, super healing activities that reconnect you to your aliveness in a body.
I love it. Now, your 3 simple practices, gratitude with water, loving kindness, and dreaming again, are powerful yet accessible. Which one of these do you think creates the most profound transformation when people commit to it daily?
They all have the profound possibility for transformation. I'd say that the water is the easiest lift because you're by yourself, no one watching. You just sort of could be in your own sense of gratitude because it starts a gratitude practice and a connection to a living being that's not a human being, is this water, it's nature. But I think the loving kindness one has the most potential to really quickly, radically shift how you feel, because we walk around in the world feeling separate, also feeling fear a lot of times about strangers that we meet. And we start to break that and start to practice this loving kindness again. Start with something simple like at the grocery store, just meet the clerk in their eyes and ask them a question. I love to do it in the TSA line. Those people work really hard at a thankless job, and just connecting with them on a human level, it really starts to open your heart and to melt all that fear of like the stranger and the otherness and the aloneness that we can feel in the modern world. So, yeah.
I do that in the elevator in my apartment block. There's 600 people. I'm the crazy person looking at everyone and greeting them and asking their names. They think I'm crazy, but I love it.
Totally. And start where it feels like you can do it and stretch, because eventually you'll get to be like that, where it doesn't feel like a thing anymore. It's just actually joyful. Yeah.
Last question. You said that the systems we believed were stable are dissolving. That we're in a moment of collective awakening.
Yeah.
What gives you hope about the kind of world we're moving towards?
Gosh, so many things. And I was just writing about this yesterday. There are so many people like you, like Allison, like everyone that's been in this summit, who are doing daily work to improve themselves, improve their communities, improve their families, improve their world. It just doesn't make the headlines. It's not flashy news pieces. So we don't see it in the same way. It's not in our face, but it's a web that's being built, and it's been happening for a long time now. And, the systems, like I said, are ready to go. Systems always come and go. Systems change is constant. So it's not that this is, it doesn't need to be a big scary thing. It's a natural movement of cycles, and the new is coming. And so if you just start to look around your neighborhood, in your community, wherever you live, you're going to see people that are really holding this dream of more beloved futures and doing what they can in their own small way. And that's the beauty of the moment, is it takes billions of us doing this work in our own little unique difference. That's like what we came in with. We don't have to do it all. Like I said, I let go of that weight of the world of needing to save the world myself. Like, what hubris? No, I just need to do my part. If we all do our part, we're going to live in a very different future. So that gives me hope, because I think we're in this moment of rebirth. So it's not a dying, it's actually a rebirth of something else that wants to come through.
Allison, I know you want to say something. This is your subject, and you're going to be the next speaker. Chime in before I let Aubrey go.
Well, I very much enjoyed listening to you, Aubrey. So thank you so much for what you're contributing and your words and your viewpoint, because it's very appreciated.
Thank you, Allison. I can't wait to hear what you have to share.
Safe travels, Aubrey.
Thank you.
You can continue watching us as you go to the airport.
I will, absolutely.
Have you with us. Take care,
Thank you
sweetie.
so much. Take care.
Bye-bye. Oh, wow. What a beautiful start to our morning. Alison, thank you for your patience. Aubrey has to catch a flight. You're the next speaker. And welcome, Nicole. You'll come in after Alison, okay? Here we go. Alison, the stage is yours. Tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
My name is Alison Lepanto, and I am based out of North Carolina in the United States. And I would like to share a story and an idea with everybody today. Have you ever had someone say, "I don't feel good"? The standard response is, "Oh, I'm sorry. Did you take something?" And if they say yes, we all collectively decide that the problem is solved. Modern medicine is incredible, truly. But sometimes the entire treatment plan consists of take something and keep going. We are born knowing how to listen to our bodies, and then we are trained to override it. My father's garage smelled like motor oil, sawdust, and cigars. The most ordinary place in the world to realize that your life might be falling apart. I looked down at my white-knuckled hands clutching his workbench behind me for balance, and I swallowed and tried again to speak words that felt like heavy, sticky grit coming out of my mouth. I whispered softly to my sister, "I think I'm dying." 4 years earlier, I had moved to what I considered my dream home. And within a year, my cognition began to unravel. At first, I assumed something was uniquely wrong with me, which, if you've ever Googled your symptoms at 2 a.m, you know it's a very short path to thinking you're dying of everything. But I couldn't think. I couldn't focus. I couldn't remember. Words kept slipping away mid-sentence. Simple decisions felt impossible. I would walk into a room and forget why I was there. My erratic behavior and health had destroyed my marriage, and I was in the process of losing my business. From the outside, I looked normal, functional. Inside, I was being strangled with shame. My test results were normal. I was told by the doctors that it was hormones or stress or just life catching up with me. The more I tried to communicate that something was really wrong, the harsher the judgment and dismissal. Maybe this was all in my head. I reached a point where I could no longer trust my perception of reality. Maybe I was really losing it. I was dying inside my own private hell, and by this time I felt ridiculous verbalizing it. It turns out that bodies don't send polite emails when something's wrong. They send signals. Around the same time that my health was collapsing, I was working with horses. Horses are honest in a way that humans aren't. They don't pretend to be fine if something's wrong. They just stand there looking uncomfortable and very expensive. I worked with a donkey named Bee. She was loved, cared for, fed carefully, seen regularly by the veterinarian, and she was falling apart. Donkeys in general are very vocal towards their loved ones and family. Bee had been quiet for months. Her owners tried new supplements, medications, feeds, but nothing was affecting change. The biggest concern was that she had stopped eating. For equines, this is a clear sign that something was very wrong, or she was ready to die. At another farm, I assessed their soil for pasture improvement. That day, it was hot, dry, and the ground beneath my feet was like concrete. It was eerily quiet. No tree frogs, no crickets, no birds, no buzzing. The soil had no sign of life, no insects, no flowers, no moisture, no oxygen. Just this thin green skin trying to survive on something that used to be soil. This was becoming the normal condition of farms asking for help. The equines and the land they lived on shared an eerie resemblance. Different species, different environments, but identical patterns. I've always been taught that if you want better answers, you need to ask better questions. I was being told that these observations were totally separate, unrelated, and accepted as normal. Equine metabolic distress, degraded pasture and soil health, unexplained human symptoms. But my intuition disagreed. As I stood at a farm, looking around, it felt like the life and vitality had quietly drained out of every living thing. And my intuition whispered, these are not separate at all. Bodies store toxins and fat. In people, the brain is the fattiest organ in the body. Today, more than 1 in 3 people worldwide live with a neurological condition. It's the leading cause of illness and disability globally. In the US, 6 in 10 adults live with at least one chronic illness. And this rise has happened alongside the rapid expansion of synthetic chemicals, pesticides, and environmental toxins in our world. In horses, the largest organ is the skin. Studies now estimate between 20 and 40% of domestic horses are overweight, obese, and showing metabolic dysfunction. One of these diseases is called PPID. It's a neurodegenerative endocrine disease, so hormones. And from 1930 to early 2000s, it was considered rare. Today, 1 in 4 horses over the age of 15 are affected. In the US, that's close to 1.7 million horses. Long-term studies show that insect populations in some regions have dropped by more than 75% in just a few decades. The chemicals that are designed to kill weeds and pests, they don't stay neatly where we spray them. And they damage the life in the soil, the insects, the birds, the wildlife. When the smallest forms of life disappear, the entire system above them weakens. For me, everything shifted when I stopped asking, how do we fix each of these problems? And instead started asking, what are they trying to tell us? What if the struggles that we're seeing in people and animals and the land aren't problems at all, but different signals from the same environment? What if the body isn't broken, but it's communicating? When I started looking at the symptoms as signals instead of failures, the question changed. Instead of what medication do I take, what is this trying to tell me? Instead of fighting these signals, I began changing conditions, reducing toxic exposure, restoring nutrient density, and rebuilding living systems anywhere possible. When the conditions changed, health began to return, not instantly, not perfectly, but clearly. Because the body often detects environmental harm long before institutions are ready to acknowledge it. And Environmental toxins don't discriminate. Over time, I realized that healing rarely comes from one miracle solution. It comes from learning how to respond to these signals differently. A way of responding that works whether you're caring for yourself, an animal, or an entire landscape. I call it heal. It's not a product or a protocol. It's a way of responding when something in your life stops thriving. H is for honoring the signals. Pain, fatigue, anxiety, inflammation, behavioral changes. These aren't inconveniences to silence. They're information. The body speaks first in whispers, then in signals, and eventually in crises. The E is for eliminating what harms. You don't have to solve everything at once, but you can start removing what is clearly draining life. Toxic exposures, chronic stress, environments that never allow recovery. Sometimes healing isn't about adding something new, but about stopping what's hurting you. A is for add what nourishes. Living systems don't recover from subtraction alone. They rebuild through nourishment, nutrition, rest, connection, sunlight, movement, healthy soil, and clean water. Nothing exotic, just the basic inputs life has always needed. L is for live in alignment. Healing isn't a one-time intervention. It's a way of living that supports vitality every day. A shift towards conditions where health becomes the default, not the exception. What if the epidemic of chronic illness isn't because we're fragile, but because the environments we've created are incompatible with health? When we change conditions, life knows how to recover, not just in our bodies, but in our animals, in our land, and in our communities. Symptoms are not the problems. They are the message, the signal. Heal is how we choose to answer.
Thank you so much, Alison. The two presentations, you and Aubrey, are so parallel. You both picked up on the same things that need to be done. And you had to go through this as a personal health challenge yourself.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing what you've done. And you're helping other people now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So now we're going to bring on Nicole, and Alison, I will bring you back when we have our panel discussion, okay?
Okay.
Nicole, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hi.
Sister, please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Absolutely. My name is Nicole Roan, and I am based in Chicago, Illinois, here in the United States, and I am very excited to share my story with you today. So for me, it was January 19th of 2019, and we were literally in the middle of a blizzard. It was the kind of blizzard where the snow was falling so thick that really everything outside felt quiet and frozen. And there I was sitting on my couch crying because I couldn't even move to make it up the stairs. Now, when I say that every single muscle in my body was in pain, I mean every single one of them. There were places that hurt that I didn't even think was possible. And I remember trying to shift my leg just a little bit so that I could stand up, but I couldn't do it. And that's when my daughter walked into the room. And like so many moms do, I quickly wiped my tears, right? And I said the things most of us say, I'm fine, babe. But she looked at me and she said, Mom, you can't even get off the couch and you're crying. I'm taking you to the hospital. Now, had I not been in so much pain, I probably would have pushed back just a little bit, but in that moment, I didn't have the strength. And that moment ended up changing everything about how I now live my life. What most people didn't know about me at that time was that my life looked completely normal on the outside, almost perfect, some people would say. I had the house in the suburbs, the husband who's a chef, the two kids, and I even had the little dog. And really, just 1 week earlier, I was in Florida celebrating my birthday. I was smiling in pictures and eating the best food and posting highlights, the kind of things that you do when you're on vacation. But what nobody could see was what I was trying to escape. I was navigating a rocky marriage because my husband was dealing with alcoholism. I was working in a job environment that was toxic, so it was draining me emotionally, on top of me having a 4-hour commute every single day, so 20 hours a week, like a part-time job. And at home, I was also carrying the emotional weight of really being a mom to 2 children with chronic health issues. And like so many women, I was carrying it all quietly. I was showing up, I was holding it together. I was smiling through it, because that's what strong women do, right? Or at least that's what we've been taught. And if I'm being honest, the part that made it so dangerous is that I'd really gotten good at carrying it all. I was the one people called when something needed to get done, the dependable one, the responsible one, the strong one. So at work, I showed up like everything was under control. At home, I showed up like everything was under control. And as a mom, I also showed up like everything was under control. But internally, I was exhausted. Not the kind of tired that you can just fix with a nap. It was more like the kind of tired that comes from holding your breath through life, when you're constantly managing problems, constantly solving things, and constantly showing up for everybody else. And the truth is, nobody really knew how heavy it had become, not even me. Looking back now, my body had already started trying to tell me something. A few days before that blizzard day, I started to feel pains in my muscles, which was all by itself abnormal. But I told myself I was probably, just in a little bit of pain from my 20-minute daily walk through downtown Chicago. So I did what a lot of us do. I tried to DIY my way through it. I scheduled a professional massage. I took Epsom salt baths. And yes, I too went to Google University to Google my symptoms. But none of it worked. And eventually, that's what landed me on that couch, unable to move. That day, when I couldn't get off the couch, my daughter did drive me to the emergency room. And after what felt like a million tests, the doctors rushed into the room and moved me straight to the ICU. Everything started happening really fast, and nobody even told me what was going on in the process. I just remember the nurses moving around the room, the machines being hooked up, doctors that were speaking in medical language that I didn't even fully understand. And all I can remember is laying there thinking, wait, how did I even get here? A week ago, I was just celebrating my birthday on the beach in Florida. A few days ago, I was walking through downtown Chicago like normal. And now suddenly I'm in an ICU bed with doctors telling me that my organs are struggling. That's when they finally explained what was happening. They said my CPK levels were over 200,000. And for reference, the normal level is around 200. So because of that, my heart was enlarged and my kidneys and other organs weren't functioning properly. And the only thing that they could do was pump liters and liters of fluid through my body to try to flush out the toxins. But that treatment was also putting more pressure on my system. So in that ICU bed, I did what most of us do in a moment like that. I prayed. And I said, God, if you save me, I promise I'll do better. While I prayed, I still remember laying there in that hospital bed, not only hearing the machines beep, but I was watching the thick snow fall outside the window. And I just kept thinking, this might be it. I might not make it back home to my kids. And what the doctors explained to me is something that I never really thought about before. They said that the extreme stress of my body, or the extreme stress that my body had been under, the pressure from work, my marriage, parenting, and everything else in between that I'd been suppressing, had started to manifest physically. My body was literally breaking down under the weight of it all. Being in that ICU bed, I had a moment of brutal honesty with myself. I realized that the way that I'd been living was not sustainable. And the truth is, I was surviving, not living. And there's really a difference between the two. I'd been managing everybody else's needs while quietly abandoning my own. And that realization made me start asking questions I'd never really sat with before. Why do I feel responsible for everything? Why do I push through even when my body is clearly telling me to stop? Why do so many women feel like rest is something that we have to earn? That hospital bed forced me to confront something many of us never stop long enough to face. And that's just because you can carry it doesn't mean you should. What I knew is that if I survived that moment, I knew something had to change. And that realization became the foundation for the work that I do today around capacity. Because capacity isn't just about time. It's about the mental, emotional, physical, and relational space we have to live our lives well. And when we ignore it, our bodies eventually speak to us. Mine clearly did in the ICU in 2019. So the way I rebuilt my life after that moment came down to 3 simple but powerful steps: awareness, alignment, and action. For me, awareness meant that I had to get honest with myself, specifically about what in my life was working, what wasn't, where was I spreading myself too thin, and where was I pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Alignment meant I had to start making decisions based on what was sustainable, not what was just expected of me. Because many of us are living lives designed around expectations, whether those are expectations from work, expectations from family, or expectations about what being strong women are and what that's supposed to look like. But alignment asks us a different question. It makes you ask, is the life I'm living aligned with what I actually want? And then came the hardest part: action. Action meant boundaries. Action meant difficult conversations. Action meant walking away from environments that were costing me too much, including my toxic job at the time and my marriage. So action meant giving myself permission to live in a way that protected my health, my peace, and my capacity. That ICU moment could have been the end of my story, but instead, it became the beginning of a new one. A story where I stopped measuring my worth by how much I could carry. A story where I started building a life that honored my capacity. And my hope is that in sharing this today, is that none of you have to learn the lesson the way that I did. Because sometimes the strongest thing we can do as women is to not push through. It's to pause, to listen to what life is telling us, and to choose a different way to live.
Wow, what an incredible story. You know, it's so fortuitous that the 3 of you are speaking on a very similar theme today, but very, very different. I'm going to bring Allison back on. It's just beautiful the way this summit has kind of come together. And this has happened the whole week. I had different speakers talking about different things, but there's a theme that's running through each group of speakers. Absolutely wonderful for you to share your story with us today. So you both experienced some serious health challenges that have brought you to this point. And I'll start with you, Allison. You're here, you said yes to the speaking opportunity. Why is it important for women to share these stories, and what inspired you to say yes?
Well, very similar to Nicole's story, which was I got to a point in my journey where the only thing that I had energy to do was to write down what I was going through. And I made a promise to myself that if I got to the other side of my illness, and if somehow my body got the ability to recover, that I would do everything I could to share with anyone who would listen, to help anyone out there, because I wanted to be the woman that I wish I had had that moment, to say, you're not crazy, you're gonna make it, you can do this. And when you're stepping out and being an advocate for yourself, it feels terrifying, and you're a little embarrassed. You know, there's a shame of like, oh, I feel like I'm a failure. And you don't want to verbalize that you're not strong, because if you're not strong, then what are you? Oh, well, you must be weak. And so, you know, we can't broadcast that. We can't talk about that. Everybody wants you to be normal. So for me, it was very personal. It was a promise I made to myself that if I didn't make it, then the words that I wrote down were what was going to be left. And if I did make it, then I was going to use my ability to speak in any way possible to throw out a lifeline, I'm here, you're not alone, and we'll get through this together.
I love it. Same question for you, Nicole. What is your inspiration? Why are you sharing your story, and why is it important for women to do this?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what Allison said. And Allison, by the way, I was nodding backstage, you know, with everything that you said. You know, I did this too because it is personal. I want other women to see that the struggles that they're going through, they're not going through them by themselves. And for me, when I've been able to see someone else get through it, it gives me not just the courage, but the confidence that if she can get through it, then I can get through it too. And so it's important for us to share these kinds of stories again, so that we know that we're not by ourselves, so that we know there are things that we can do, and that we don't have to settle for less than we deserve in any single area of our lives. And with the right people, you can make it happen.
What I really loved about what your talk focused on is you highlighted that the vulnerabilities are not something to be ashamed of. And that is, I was like doing jumping jacks out here, because I was like, yes, because that is the one thing as women, is we're just supposed to carry it all and not talk about it. And, you know, your perspective of looking at things and having hard discussions and asking yourself the hard questions and getting the uncomfortable answers that don't fit in your current situation, but that's the only way to get out of it. Like, I loved how you explained your story, and your thought process there was beautifully done.
Thank you so much.
Let's go back to you, Allison. Your talk focused on environmental health, body signals, and the connection between human, animal, and soil health. Now, your journey began with unexpected health issues that doctors could not diagnose.
Yes.
What was the turning point that made you start trusting your intuition instead of the medical explanations that you were being given?
So initially, the dozens of doctors and the tests were saying that everything was fine. But when I was putting my hands on animals, and I was able to absorb that these animals, I was seeing the same symptoms, I was seeing the same behaviors, and I was like, wait. And, you know, then I'm dealing with experts in other fields, whether it's the land or the animals, that are like, oh, that's normal. And I was like, wait, so it's just normal that we have animals dying of diseases that we've never heard of 15 years ago and is taking over. And then with the soil, the fact that we're using chemicals in an explosive way everywhere. It's just totally normal. And yet we have losses of insects, we have losses of life. And I stood in this one farm and I looked around and I was like, it hit me, because how I was feeling was what I was seeing all around me, in the soil, in the grass, in the animals that don't hide because of the expectation that you're supposed to behave a certain way. They show you raw how they feel. And I'm looking at that brutal honesty from the land and from the animals, and I felt it inside of me, and I was like, this cannot be ignored. My intuition cannot stay silent any longer. And I knew, whether I found the answers or not, I knew that something was really wrong, and it was all connected. And I did manage to find testing for the right things, and it was validated that it was a massive exposure to environmental toxins, and I can't stay silent on that.
Go back to you, Nicole. Your story explores the burnout, stress, capacity, and the cost of carrying too much as women. You describe that moment when your body literally shut down, landed you in ICU. Looking back now, what early signs had your body been trying to tell you?
Yeah, there were many. There were many. It wasn't just, the muscles hurting. There were chronic headaches that I'd had, right? I just literally talked about how at that stressful, toxic job, every Sunday night, like clockwork, I would get a migraine, and I would do everything but accept what it was. I would say, oh, the weather changed, or, maybe I didn't get enough rest, or, just not calling it what it was. There were also the other internal signals, right? So every time that I was at work and I was, in one of those situations, whether it was with mean girls, because they still exist in our adult lives at work, or dealing with management who constantly shifted priorities and we couldn't really keep up, the knots in my stomach. So it was that. But also on the more personal side with my marriage, just the connection. It was really, really hard. I could feel like we weren't communicating the same way. And I knew what the issue was with the alcoholism, but I didn't know how it was impacting me. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. And can I say quickly too, Allison, as you talked about the environment and really just trusting your gut, that really spoke to me, because we're both saying the same things in different ways, right? And we both talked about alignment. And I just really appreciate you sharing your story, because even the decision to walk away from that toxic job and to walk away from my marriage, there was so much guilt and shame that came with that, because I didn't want to look like a failure, right? I didn't want to be a single parent or, be looked at like that. And so I applaud you for continuing to push forward and for trusting your gut and sharing your story today.
Well, thank you. What you were just saying about the identity, that the identity of like we tie ourselves, like the essence of who we are, into what we do, which those are two totally different things. And it's amazing, like, okay, well, who I am is the wife, or who I am is this job, or who I am is, and then that's where there's this immense like failure shame that comes from like stepping away. And like for me with the business, it was I was like, oh, I'm this massive like diehard entrepreneur and I'm going to conquer the world, and I just kept pushing through everything because that was my identity. I was like, well, who am I if I don't do this? And if I admit that I'm sick, or if I admit that there's something wrong, then who does that make me? So I definitely appreciate, there's a lot of correlations between your experiences and the things I notice. And it gives me goosebumps to hear you share some of it, because I'm like, I know exactly what she's feeling.
It's incredible how our stories are more similar than they are not similar, right? Just listening to the two of you speaking, I think you both know that her story was started because I collapsed with congestive heart failure. So we are all saying the same thing. I had the headaches. I was living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, going through my divorce, developed these weird headaches and the dry cough that came at night. And I would go to this emergency center. They'll give me cough mixture and headache medication. And one day I was talking to my kids on Zoom, and my daughter looked at me and said, "Mom, you don't look yourself. There is something else they're missing. You need to come home." So I flew all the way back to New Zealand to see my doctor. And he didn't understand how I didn't have a stroke on the flight home. My blood pressure was in the 200s. Nobody checked my blood pressure in the US. And because I had abnormally low blood pressure my whole life, it wasn't kind of on my radar to say, "Please check my blood pressure." So I was put on the medication. I'm flying back to Albuquerque, stopped in Melbourne to see my daughter. When she saw me in person, she's like, "Mom, you're not going back. I'm sending you to Bali. You're going to get a 10-day vacation in a spa, getting a massage. You have not stopped since the divorce." And I collapsed on the 9th day of that trip in Indonesia, congestive heart failure. So the signs are always there, but we ignore them. We push through the pain. And as women, we need to know when to stop. I think that's the clear message I'm hearing today. So going back to you, Alison, you describe symptoms as signals rather than problems. How can people start listening to these signals before they escalate into serious illnesses?
Well, the first thing is to acknowledge them. So I have H's, honor the signals. It's really, really important because we all have them. You had them, Nicole had them, I definitely had them, but it was almost like shame and embarrassment to even say that, like, oh, my adrenaline, oh, my headaches, oh, it's nothing. And that's why I talk in the beginning about like, oh, the culture of like, we're just going to take medicine and it'll be fine. I encourage people, if you feel in your body, whether it's your heart rate is increasing, your stomach goes into knots, you feel sick, you get headaches, you don't want to eat, or whatever that change is, that this is not me. Those are signals. And the best thing you can do is take a moment and look around and say, is this me doing something because I think that I should? Am I shoulding all over myself?
Yes.
Or is this something that I need to do? Is this something I want to do? Is this something I should do? Or I have to do? Like, look at that and then ask yourself, is this toxic to me? Is this nourishing me? And is this promoting alignment for health? Is this sustainable? If I do this, is it promoting life? And if the answer is I don't know, then it's probably no.
That is so true. Going back to you, Nicole, many women pride themselves on being the strong one, right? Who carries everything. Why do you think so many women feel responsible for everyone else's well-being and they neglect their own?
That's a loaded question. What I've learned in my experience and through my own healing journey is that it starts pretty early sometimes. For me, I'm the second oldest of 10 siblings. And so very early, as far as I can go back, at 9, I was responsible for my children my siblings, while my parents went through a divorce. And so I ended up being the mom figure, or, when things were chaotic in the household, I was the one who was keeping everything calm. And so I inherently learned and started to believe that it was my job to fix everything and to keep the peace. alongside of that, I feel like society glorifies the strong person, right? We think that being busy is a badge of honor, and that being part of Team No Sleep makes you somehow, you know, invincible. And so for me, it's unlearning those behaviors. But first, it's the awareness, right? Like you said, like looking at it and paying attention to it long enough. And it's taken me a really long time, even in this day of 2026, to get to the realization that these habits started at 9 years old. So when you've been doing this for so long, that awareness part helps you, and then you get the tools and the resources that you need to pick that thing up from the root and, you know, learn a better way while you're listening to your body, and not dismissing it altogether.
It's so interesting to hear you speak. So I'm the second of 5 children. I have 3 little brothers. I had an older sister who got really ill when we were teenagers. And I kind of stepped into that big sister role. So the little brothers after me are 6 years younger. The one after me is younger. And I was literally the pseudo mom when mom was at work, dad was at work. I looked after my little brothers. I looked after my sister. I quit school at 17. I got a job. I paid off my parents' mortgage by the time I was 19. I know that little girl you're talking about. We inherit all of these things really early. Wow. Question for you, Allison. You discovered the parallels between human illness, animal health, and soil degradation. What does this interconnected perspective reveal about how we approach health in the future?
Everything is connected. So one of the things I hear in my industry with the herbicides and pesticides is, oh, it's fine. I've been using it for years. Oh, my grandfather used it. You know, that doesn't mean that it's not toxic. You know, these chemicals that are affecting the ground, they affect us. I mean, we are the same environment, and so it is a poison. And so it is poisoning the ground, it is poisoning the insects, it is definitely poisoning us, it is poisoning the animals, and we tend to specialize everything. We see this a lot in the health industry, where you go to the doctor and he sends you to a specialist, who refers you to another specialist, and basically we've broken the body down into like all these individual little components. But at the end of the day, like, we are one system. And our system communicates with all the other systems of life out there, whether it's a tree or the grass or the birds or the animals. It really doesn't matter. That's all part of the ecosystem. And those environments being impacted, if it impacts one, it impacts all of us. And if it is creating a void, if it's taking life, that doesn't stay contained. So that the pebble in the water where it has ripples, those ripples, you know, we acknowledge there's 1 or 2 ripples, and then we ignore the rest. And it's like those rings keep growing and continue to reverberate across all of these different environments. And the more that we can bring attention to that and make better decisions and support each other, and the awareness and the permission to make better decisions is the best thing that we can do for each other.
Yeah, that's just amazing. Nicole, you teach the concept of capacity. How can people recognize when they've reached their true capacity before their health forces them to stop?
Absolutely. There are a couple different ways. You know, really, again, it comes back to that awareness and paying attention. One of the signals that I remember is being snappy all the time, right? And there's one specific instance where I share in some speaking engagements that I came in after one of those 4-hour commutes for the day. You know, the husband and the kids were there. Even though dinner was ready, the house was clean, I saw 2 dishes in the sink, 2, and I lost my cookies. And my husband and my kids were like, what is wrong with you? And that's not my personality, right?
Yeah.
And so, that was one of those ahas. Also, pay attention to the inability to focus. I always have been and still am a checklist kind of gal. Even though we have the digital stuff, I like to write it down and cross it off. I realized that I was writing that to-do list. I would rewrite it at the end of the day, get in the next day, reprioritize. But no matter how many times I wrote it out, I couldn't focus because I was concerned and thinking about all the things that were going on at home. And a third way is just your sleep patterns, right? Not everybody I know gets 8 to 10 hours of sleep. Some of us are 6 or 7 on a good day. But what I realized during this time was that not only was I having trouble falling asleep because of the constant, mind racing and frustrations, all the day's work, right? But I also couldn't stay asleep. And so that lack of sleep was contributing to my mental capacity, my emotional capacity, the physical capacity. And so really just paying attention to those things and stop explaining it away. We got to stop explaining away our experiences because it's data that we need to pay attention to.
That sleep thing is a big deal. So I had this thing where I used to say you can turn a 24-hour day into 36. And I would say to people, I only need 4 hours of sleep. I sleep in 4-hour chunks. And I literally would do this, right? I would just be on the go constantly. And it really messed up my circadian rhythm. It's only just recently that I've started getting 8 hours of sleep. But the last 7 years, I had to untrain the way that I had treated my body. I would sleep 4 hours and wake up and just keep going.
Your body was used to it.
Yeah, and I lost so much weight since I started sleeping the 8 hours. So I couldn't lose weight. My body just was not coping.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm
interesting.
so proud of you for doing that, for realizing it, and even just honestly putting this together and using your platform to help us reach other women because none of us really knew each other outside of this. And it just feels divine that all of our stories are aligned because I guarantee there's somebody who's listening that's like, yes, that's me.
This is me. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so why we're sharing these stories that we are more similar than we are not similar.
Mm-hmm.
We are women from different countries, different experiences, but we are experiencing the same thing in life.
Yes.
It's okay. It's just when you recognize it, you can do something about it.
Yes.
Now, going back to you, Allison, your HEAL framework, it offers a powerful way to respond to health challenges. Which of the 4 steps do people usually resist the most, do you think?
The first one, always. That's the hardest one because that's the internal, I have to slow down, I have to listen to that little tiny whispering, quiet voice inside that's saying, hey, this is not good for you. Hey, we don't like this. Hey, we're not comfortable. Hey, you need more rest. The other ones, eliminating toxicity, I would say that's probably the easiest for everybody. They go to the grocery store and they're like, oh, I'm just going to cut out soda, or I'm going to cut out caffeine, or I'm going to stop eating junk food. That's probably the easiest because it's the clearest, like, oh, I'm just not, I can replace that with something. Adding nutrition, people do that even easier. They order their supplements or their new products. Those are all external things. I would say the honoring the signals is the hardest. And I would say the second hardest is the living in alignment, because that is the accountability aspect for every moment thereafter that you ask yourself, is this good for me? Is this getting me to a healing place, to a healthier place, to a place where I have something to give, to a place where I can continue to live and offer? Or is this taking me to a place where I'm depleted and I have nothing left?
That is so true. And recognizing that your food is your medicine.
Yes.
I started living like a caveman. Every time my kids come and visit, there is no food in my house, right? So I eat fresh every single day. But what it does, it forces me to get out of the damn house and go to the supermarket and buy fresh food.
Yes.
I eat fresh every single day. There is nothing in my fridge, whether it's meat, whether it's vegetables, but just being very aware of what you're putting in your mouth, that your food is your medicine.
It's so important because the food, especially your fruits and vegetables, I mean, it has an energetic life to it. And it's not just water, it's not just nutrients. I mean, we can talk about bionutrients all day, but from an energy standpoint, like, you are taking that into your body, and if it's dead food, you're not, it doesn't matter if it's a complete mineral profile, you're not increasing your life force at all. And if anything, you're actually expending your life force trying to digest and extract dead nutrients out of it. And we're living energetic beings, and we need to remember that, so that every time we make a decision, like, are we spending more than we've put in? You know, when we eat, like, are we re-energizing ourselves? And if the answer is no, then we need to make different or better decisions.
Yeah, and the drinking of water, the previous speaker talked about, saying thank you to the water before you drink it. I was reading somewhere somebody who said that a lot of times when you feel hungry, have a glass of water first. Sometimes you're just thirsty and you think you're hungry. So just being conscious that water, again, is medicine. In Zimbabwe, we have a religious sect called the Apostolic Faith. And when I was a kid, they used to heal with water. People would go to these monks, and they would get 2 liters of water, and they would pray over the water, and the person would go home with this water. And it didn't make sense then, but now that I've started looking at how other people are using water to heal, it now makes perfect sense. Water is our medicine. All right, so let's go to you, Nicole. Your framework of awareness, alignment, and action helped you to rebuild your life. Which step tends to be the most difficult for people to take?
Action, hands down. I think, as Allison said, the awareness part is hard too, right? Because we have to slow down, pay attention, to all the different things across every single area of our lives. And then the alignment part, I think, is the easiest, because for me, it's so easy to put together a budget, but can you stick to it? Right? I think of it like that. Or it's easy to, put that to-do list together, but are you going to take action on it or be distracted? And part of it also is because the action part requires you to make some of those hard decisions. It's where the rubber meets the road. And so, getting to a place, for example, to say, oh, I need to get more sleep, right? Okay, so I'm going to go to bed earlier. I'm going to pick out my clothes the day before. I'm going to, do all these different things. And then when it comes time to go to bed, we talk ourselves out of it. And we'll say, oh, I just need 15 more minutes. I need to do just one more thing. And before you know it, it's midnight. And so I think actually doing the work is the hardest part for us. And I say all the time that knowing better and doing better is half of the battle. But the bridge and the key to that is really for us to make sure that we have our hearts and our minds on the same page. They have to be together for whatever it is. But that action part,
it's a hard part. But once you get into the rhythm of committing to a schedule, a timetable, the action becomes easier. I know that now if I don't go for my walk, my body actually doesn't feel okay. I can't sleep. So unless I go out and I do that 20-minute walk before bed, I actually do not feel well. So action, I love that. Okay, my last question for both of you, going back to you, Allison. If you could change one thing about how society approaches health and wellness, what would it be?
it would be to acknowledge how poisonous the chemicals that we have normalized in our food, our water, our daily life is. That would be the one thing that I would change. Oh, if it was on every billboard about all of the repercussions, not just in this generation, but these chemicals are being passed from women generationally, like up to 20 generations. That's not a small thing. That is massive. If that was promoted on commercials and on billboards and in inside of books and in magazines, I think there would be a radical change and we would have a totally different future.
So true. Thank you, Allison. Nicole, your last question. If someone listening today realizes that they're living in survival mode, what is the first boundary they should set to begin reclaiming their health and their energy?
Whew, the first one. I believe that all of our boundaries have to start with ourselves. And so setting a boundary with yourself around what you're willing to tolerate, what you're willing to sacrifice your health and well-being for, and what you're willing to sacrifice your time for. We can always make more money, right? Time is the one resource that you cannot duplicate. And so setting a boundary with yourself first around, I guess that's 3 boundaries, but around those things, what you're willing to sacrifice, tolerate, or give your time to.
I love that. Ladies, thank you so much. This has been such an interesting discussion. Like I said, it's just magical how you're more similar than we are different. Now, I don't know if you two can join me for the last speaker. It's a 15-minute presentation, and then we'll just sum up with comments about her speech. She couldn't join us, but I do want to honor all the women who stepped forward. Are you okay to hang around for another 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. I'll bring you on in a minute, okay? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow, what a day. I absolutely love my life. I love the women that I work with. This is the reason why I'm on the planet and I do what I do, to honor and bring these stories to life. This is our last speaker for the day.
Hi, I'm Joey and I'm a kangaroo. Now, you may think I'm a little off because I think I'm a kangaroo, but once you take this journey with me, you'll understand why you're a kangaroo too. I'll never forget the day. It was June 3rd, 2015, and it was hot. And my little one, it was just in time to tuck her into bed. And she asked me the question. Now, mind you, I was a little nervous at first. My hands started to sweat because I thought she was going to ask, where do babies come from? Well, luckily she didn't. She asked me if I would read her a story instead. Now, in that moment, I had a choice. Read her a story or take some much needed me time for mommy. Well, I chose to read her a story instead. I crawled into her little toddler bed, squunched up and pulled her in close. I could feel her warm, fuzzy pajamas against me, purple and pink polka dots. I could feel the softness of her skin, smell the cocoa butter. I could feel the tingling hair rubbing against my face as she nestled in. And I kissed her on her forehead and began to read a story called Joey. Pouch. Now, Pouch was a regular story. It was a story about a kangaroo who was afraid to leave his mother's pouch. And when he left the mother's pouch, he would hop into the forest 2 steps and he met a creature. And he asked a very important question. Who are you? And the creature replied, bird. And he screamed, pouch, and would run as fast as he can and dove back into his mother's pouch. His mother would wait a little bit, look down at him, and Joey will pop his head up and look around, and she would ask him a simple question. Are you ready to come back out now? And he would say yes. This time, he jumped 5 hops into the forest, past Bird, and came across a new creature and asked the same question, who are you? And the creature replied, B. And Joey screamed, pouch, and ran as fast as he could back past Bird and jumped back into his mother's pouch. Now, if I was his mom, I would have said either you're in the pouch or you're out the pouch. She's not going to keep jumping back and forth. She was so patient, and she looked down at him again and asked, are you ready to come out now? And he shook his head yes. And this time, he took 10 hops into the forest, back past Bird, back past Bee, and came across a new creature. And he asked, who are you? And the creature replied, kangaroo. And he turned and yelled, ah! And then stopped and realized that he was looking at himself. And he said, you were afraid of me too? Then the both kangaroos' mothers came and asked if they wanted to go back in the pouch. And they both said no and hopped into the forest together. In that moment, I realized I was Joey. I was afraid of what life had to offer me. I was afraid of who I was. And I was always wondering and questioning, who am I? Tears started to form in the corners of my eyes, and one started to stream down my face as I understood that I could relate to Joey because the pouch was my comfort zone. It's easier to shrink, it's easier to be voiceless than it is to recognize the truth. It's easier to stay in the shadow to be in the light. See, for me, I had to dig in that moment. Well, where did this fear of anxiety and low self-worth and low self-esteem and doubt really come from? Like, what were the roots? Why did I feel unloved or not seen or valued or my voice didn't matter? And in that moment, I had a glimpse of back to a time where the splitting happened. It was in California, and I was a young girl, about 11 years old. I had been sexually molested, by my girl cousin. And it opened up the door to so many things, there's so many questions, and many things it did. It stripped me of my voice and my identity, and I didn't know who I was anymore. I remember my father had drove up and we packed everything into the little white Miata car and started to drive off. But what I forgot to do was to turn around and look back. Because had I done that, I would have realized the little girl I left behind, the one who was frail and had tattered clothes and was weak, the one reaching out for me and ran as fast as she could, whispering, wait, wait, don't leave me, take me with you. And for 25 years of my life, we were separated. For 25 years, I moved on as if nothing ever happened, as if that part of my life never existed. However, the roots certainly did. The seeds that were genetically modified, that tainted this precious soil as a young girl, changed my thought and my identity in every aspect of my life. And as I got older, as a wife, as a mom, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, it impacted my decision making, and it impacted how I showed up, it impacted how I led. It wasn't until I was 35 and I was at a conference learning about professional speaking when I had an epiphany. One, I realized that I was a speaker and I was called to speak. And the second thing is I started the journey of healing. The best way to describe it is watching a movie and you're the actor on the screen and you're tapping your friend and saying, hey, look, I'm on the screen, versus being in the movie and realizing I'm speaking the lines. That's me. And the moment I realized that was me was the moment that my healing journey began. And over the few years, I started to apply this acronym I'm going to share with you called ROOT. And this really helped me transition from this woman who was voiceless, this woman who didn't stand in her power, even though everybody else around her could see it. They could sense it. They experienced it. They felt it. But yet I could not, because I was numb. I was still broken. I was still tattered. I was still worn. I was still frail. I was still that little girl, even though I was now a grown woman. So first I had to recognize. I had to recognize what happened to me. I had to recognize my emotions. I had to recognize my feelings in that moment. And this has helped in life because there are times that trauma shows back up and I have to pause and say, where is this coming from? Why am I responding this way? Is this who I truly am? And as I go through the process of answering the questions, I'm recognizing my emotions and my feelings, and I'm uncovering the truth, which then allows me to change the narrative. Number two is I had to own what happened. I had to own my story. I had to own my part. I had to own my healing. And by doing so, I was able to take the power back from what happened to me and the destruction that it did, and be able to now create a new narrative and use this as a launching pad to be able to help others who've been through the same thing. Then there's the other O, open. I had to be open to transformation. I had to be open and willing to do the work. Now, sometimes that's scary because you don't know what may come up. However, in the process of healing, I realized the power of a healed woman. And by doing the inner work, it produced my outer success. Because I was open to transformation, I was open to facing the fear, I was open to looking at this horrible situation that took place, but also recognizing the woman I became because of it. Standing in a place of gratitude because it helped shape my narrative. And again, it allowed me to be open to taking my voice back, open to owning the mistakes I make as a mother, as a leader, as a wife, owning my shortcomings and saying, you know what, I can do better. I can be better. So first I had to recognize, then I had to own it, then I had to be open. And finally, T, I had to thrive and transform, or transform and thrive. Through my transformation, through understanding that was a temporary moment in my life, but did not define who I am and who I was called to be. And I helped reshape again that narrative and allowed me to thrive. Now I was able to launch my company as a boss mom. I was able to be a more intentional mother, in tune to my children's feelings and emotions, and being able to help them regulate their nervous system, getting them to breathe and understanding the importance of where is this thought coming from? Because our mind replays what we think, what we produce, and what we see. And one thing that I know is that if you heal the mom, you heal the home. A healed woman heals environments, and communities thrive and flourish. Why? Because now we're not reproducing what was planted. We have uprooted these tainted seeds, and now we've replanted them with seeds of wholeness, of love, of worth. And when a woman stands in power and understands her worth, nothing can stop her. Nothing can stop her impact. So in order to transition into becoming a woman of power, a healed woman of power, who did the work on the inside so that she can manifest the success on the outside. Again, you have to recognize what you went through, recognize the thoughts, recognize the emotions. You have to be, own it. You have to be vulnerable and understand, well, what did I do? What happened exactly? What is my part? Own your healing. You have to be open to the transformation, open to getting in touch with your inner self, open to getting in touch to your higher power. For me, it's God. And through prayer and through understanding who I was created to be, the original blueprint and design, I was able to heal in a way I never could before. And then you have to transform and thrive. Once you start the transformation process, now you can flourish. Now you can thrive. Now you can bloom, prosper, and grow in every environment. I know this has truly impacted my life. And not just mine, but my children and future generations as well. Thank you. My name is Ayoka Yashua El, and I am a boss cultivator and the CEO and founder of Boss Mom Global, where we help ambitious boss moms of faith go after what they want without sacrificing what they love the most. And it was an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you.
Wow. What a beautiful end to our online summit. Oh, man. All of these amazing women who step forward to inspire, to share their experiences. Ayoka, thank you so much for being with us virtually. I love the fact that so many women who knew they couldn't be here in person sent through their videos, were able to share their stories as well during the summit. And it actually doesn't make any difference whether you're here or not. We're going to unpack your story right now and give you some feedback, the things that we've learned from it. I'll ask the two of you to tell me one thing that made an impression on you from Ayoka's presentation. Who'd like to start? Alison?
I can start.
Go for it.
One of the things that I loved is how she said, when you heal the mom, you heal the whole. And so, thinking about even kind of combining this with Alice and what you were talking about with the generations, 20 generations of all these things that are continuing to be carried, healing just one mom in those 20 generations has that ripple effect that's going to outlast all of us. And so that really touched me.
Absolutely beautiful. Any comments, Alison?
I love how she brought in the childhood story and connected the little girl. Like we all have that. Like we all have that little girl inside of us. Nicole, you mentioned raising your siblings at that young age. Gertrude, you also went through that period of like intense responsibility. There it could be trauma, it could be responsibility, but there is a shift that happens at a certain age where when that shift happens, that child freezes in time and stays with us. And it impacts how we view the rest of our life through that lens. And that I love how she put that, because at some point in our lives, each of us goes through a period where we have to have that conversation with that inner child and either tell them that they're safe or tell them that we love them or tell them that, be the parent or the older sibling or whoever for that child. And I love how she tied that in. I thought that was really beautiful, and I think it's very relatable.
And her analogy of the kangaroo and the little Joey inside its mother's pouch, how we all have our comfort zones. It's hard to break out of your comfort zones. I know that they say that everything you want is on the other side of fear, but we get so comfortable in being where we are, it's a challenge to break out of it. So Ayoka's presentation kind of summarizes almost everything that we've touched on today in some way, but it's really empowering to see how people can heal through trauma, reclaiming their voice. And the root framework for me, I think, was the most powerful thing as well. So, Ayoka, although you are not here with us, you have given us some nuggets, some gems that we can take away. Thank you for being one of our virtual speakers this morning. So, ladies, I have to thank you for hanging out with me and sharing your stories. Let's do this again in 3 months' time. So, every quarter, we have an online event. Let's stay in touch. And Nicole, we still need to do your podcast interview. So, I will send you a calendar invite so that we can reconnect with you and unpack your story in a more relaxed way as well. And Alice and I am looking forward to seeing you on the TED platform. You have done so much work to getting there. It's very, very exciting to be working with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Absolute honor to have met you. Let's definitely stay connected.
Yes, thank you both. Bless you both.
Thank
And
you.
thank you to everybody who tuned in. The HerStory Circle is here to bring you stories of extraordinary women. We share our stories to uplift you, to inspire you, to energize you, but most importantly, to help take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. You heard stories from incredible women today. If you know somebody who's going through a health challenge, please tag them on this video. If you know someone who needs to slow down and pay attention to their body before they crash, again, help us get these videos to get into the right hands. The responsibility is now on you to help us spread these stories. Back again at the end of June with yet another amazing HerStory Summit. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now.